What's up, Gabe?
It's a word, dude.
I feel like I catch you off guard.
Going straight in. What's up, dude?
I feel like I catch you off guard every week.
You did, man. I thought you were going to, bring in the show, welcome in, something like that.
That's too formal. We don't roll like that. We just jump right into it.
I get you. Man, I'm kicking it.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Tobogganed up.
Yeah. It's cold, man. We got the ice storm rolling through.
Possibly.
What do you mean possibly?
It might be rain.
Do you watch 3 there, or what is it? Is it 5 on your side? They're on our side.
I do not watch.
Channel 5 is on your side. I have looked at the extended forecast. Sir.
Okay, so you're predicting ice.
And I'm out in East Memphis, so I have to. I treat it differently because as soon as sleet, freezing rain starts falling, power goes out every single time.
Yeah.
Got to drip those sinks.
It's unfortunate.
Got to mad unfortunate.
Madam.
You got to drip those sinks, baby. I'm not used to that. Like I grew up in St. Louis. It's like it's all pretty taken care of.
Right.
Because they're used to it. Here, no.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, you doing all right? You
Yeah,
good?
man. I'm good. I'm all good, man.
That's it. You're just good. You don't
It's been an interesting week. I'll say that for me.
Yeah.
Professionally.
Yeah.
Done it 56.
Yeah.
So
Big stuff coming.
moving on. I will make, announcements will be coming soon.
Yeah, no formal announcements until next week.
Well, maybe
later,
later this week.
I'm talking about on the podcast because
Yeah.
we won't record until next week. So
Yeah, no formal announcements. Correct.
On here.
You are correct, sir. Yeah. Yes. Professionally.
Yeah.
Weird, bizarre week for me.
well,
First transition.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. But you're good though.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just.
You want to ask me if I'm good again?
No,
We
no,
keep going back and forth?
I think we
Good.
got that nailed down.
Good deal.
So let's jump right into some Memphis basketball.
Yep.
I think fans are probably pretty happy at this point in the season, deservedly so. 5-game winning streak, another back-to-back win over the week. What'd you think of these past 2 games, SMU and Tulsa? The worst teams in the conference.
They're so bad. They're so bad, man. They're awful.
But Memphis took care of business.
Yeah, they took care of business.
They covered both games.
They didn't. They covered the SMU game. They
pushed
that free throw at the end of the Tulsa game.
No, the line was 12.
12, yeah.
It was 12 and a half, I thought.
No,
Did
it was
go
12.
down? Okay, so they pushed. They pushed.
They pushed.
But that's a rough push, though.
That
Let
is
me ask y'all a question. How does Las Vegas get it right so often?
Well, they don't give out free crab legs for nothing, man. Come on. They make money over there.
I don't know. I don't understand the free crab legs reference, but
I don't know. I'm just spitballing. But hey, listen, they make money over there. There's a reason that they the lights never turn off and that city never sleeps, right?
I think that's New York, but okay. City that never sleeps.
Well, isn't Vegas that way?
Vegas doesn't sleep either.
Sin City,
Yeah,
but they don't
Vegas
sleep
doesn't
either.
sleep
Yeah,
either,
they
yeah.
sin all night.
What's Christian trying to correct me for, Kenny? Let's check this guy now.
Let's check this guy right
Well,
now.
it's
Hold
Las
on.
Vegas. You think they sleep in Vegas? You ever been to Vegas?
I have.
Yeah, they don't sleep there.
No.
There's always people walking up and down the strip.
Half-naked people walking around the strip at all times.
Yep.
Yeah. So, anyway.
I thought
We
they managed
digress.
it. I thought they managed it well. I don't think anything to write home about necessarily. Still some good things that we're seeing. Keonte Kennedy has very clearly found his role.
As has Elijah McCadden.
Elijah McCadden as well, but Keonte Kennedy from the three-point line, that's something you wanted to see come alive at some point, and he's 11 for 20 in the last 4 games, which are all wins and relatively convincing wins. Got to see Jaden Hardaway come back. Jaden Hardaway, by the way, like in his career, I think it's sort of been like a weird polarized conversation because he's the coach's son, right? But he plays a huge role on this team. He makes sense as a role player on this team, a guy who can shoot the 3 ball and is connected on the defensive end. It's simple, but I thought it was fine, but they're going to have some tougher games coming up that they have to manage just as well.
Yeah, and so that was important, right? Like taking care of business in the games that they had because they were, favored in those games. Those were lesser opponents, as I mentioned, the 2 worst teams in the conference in SMU and Tulsa. So taking care of business was important because we have seen Memphis in the past drop those kind of games.
Yep.
And Tulsa for the first half felt like that
It
was
was ugly.
going to be one of those games.
Yeah.
Memphis finally was able to pull away with, about 7 or 8 minutes left in the second half. And, man, that would have been just a
That would have been brutal.
monster loss. So, fortunately, they take care of business. Both of those games, Kendric Davis in the second half of that Tulsa game was lights out, and he was incredible in the SMU game.
Personal for him there.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, you could tell
You
it was
said
a little bit different in that game, and came out a little flat in the first half against Tulsa. Did not play well at all, turning the ball over, couldn't hit shots, couldn't get to the free throw line, and then he kind of flipped the switch in the second half and took over. And him and DeAndre Williams continue to be one of the better 1-2 punch combos in the country.
Yep.
So
And the role players starting to step up. Like I said with Keonte, Elijah,
Yeah.
Jaden. I mean, it's all good. The one negative you look at is big men front court right now. But you get Malcolm Dandridge healthy. KO's been starting but not playing a lot of minutes.
Right.
You immediately throw in Malcolm to take a lot of those minutes and a lot of the sort of bumping and grinding of what you'll see in the AAC.
Yeah.
And I think they'll hold those guys down. But even against Tulsa, was it Dulger?
Dulger, yeah.
Yeah, he went off. Victor Locken went off. But that's the only negative. But we talked about it last week. It seems like Penny Hardaway and that staff they're completely
Okay
fine
with that
happening.
Yeah. And I think Penny said going into the Tulsa game that there was a possibility that Malcolm would play on Sunday against Tulsa. Obviously, he didn't, but at least somewhat encouraging that he's getting close, especially with this stretch of games coming up that you mentioned. I think it's Tulane, South Florida, Temple, and then you get the Houston game on February 19th.
Yeah, I mean UCF, then at Houston, at Wichita State versus Cincinnati, and then at SMU, Houston. I mean, this is going to be their toughest stretch of conference schedule. And South Florida, I mean, I know they're not a good team. I get that, but Tyler Harris is playing well, and they beat UCF, I think, just last week. I mean, they're playing better, and we saw even at home the Tigers struggle to sort of hold their offense down. So that's going to be tough coming up here relatively soon.
How important is it to go get this Tulane game back? First conference game of the year, they lost in New Orleans. Is it important to go get this one back?
I think every single game that's not a Houston or UCF, well, Cincinnati, they got the one there, so I think at home is still important. But I think every single game outside of Houston is going to be pretty vital. When it comes down to bracketology, you don't want to drop those.
No.
Right? It's not like they're bad teams, but they're not as well respected as some of the names you'll see come tournament time, and you want that committee to think favorably upon you. So I think getting that revenge is going to be huge.
Yeah, and we're seeing them kind of climb back up that ladder right now, right? When it comes to the net rankings and Kim Palm and bracketology, like Memphis is kind of starting to fight and claw their way back up in the rankings. I think I might have them flip, but I think they were top 40 in Kim Palm and right at 40 in the net. I'm pretty sure that's right. I think they were 35.
They got to as high as 35.
I think they're 35 in Kim Palm, 40 in net, and then maybe
so currently as we record 41.
41 in net.
Yeah.
I think maybe 10 seed in bracketology.
Yeah.
From Joe Lenardi. So they're starting to get some of that respect back that they were really getting early in the season when we saw them right outside the top 25, and I think we saw them as high as a 7 or 8 seed.
Yep.
In the bracket. So starting to work back towards that way, and now you have the opportunity to expound on that against the middle of the road teams of the conference before you take on Houston.
And they help a little bit. You'll go a little higher in the net with some of these wins, looking around the country and what other teams do. But, I still look at their seeding right now, and I'm curious. Like, there's a lot of leeway to each side. Not a lot of leeway, but there's some leeway to each side. They really could raise themselves pretty highly if they get a win against Houston at home or away. Certainly if they sweep them, that would be fantastic. But going into the conference tournament, if they get one of those games, I think they could get themselves 8, maybe 7 in a perfect situation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they control their own destiny right now, which with them playing the way that they are is a good sign. And in hopes that they don't revert back to the way they were playing 6 or 7 games ago, when they just looked discombobulated and they looked like they had no chemistry on the floor. and now we see them playing as a cohesive unit. And you can go back and say, well, that's flip-flopped, right? Like earlier in the year they were, and then the middle stretch they weren't, and now they're back on. So is it really that they're cohesive, or have they just hit on a few games? And I think what has happened is they've adjusted to playing without Malcolm Dandridge and Alex Lomax, and we see the unit that's been on the floor really is gelling at this point.
Understanding.
Like you said, with the way that Keonte Kennedy's playing and Elijah McCadden's playing, that we mentioned this last week, like they are the engine that drive this team.
Yep.
They're going to dictate where this team goes because DeAndre Williams and Kendrick Davis can only take it so far.
Right.
Like you have to have those other guys step up, and McCadden and Kennedy are 3 and 4 in whichever order you want to put them right now as far as importance on this team.
What are your thoughts at this point? Because we know what Penny said in the offseason and even the early season when DeMaria Franklin was not eligible and had to get his waiver. He ends up getting it, the whole thing, all 9 yards. We can relitigate that all we want.
Right.
But what do you think the deal is right now? Defensively, he's been fine here and there, but offensively, I think he's gotten away from absolutely killing them with turnovers and just sort of getting in the way on the offensive end. But what's going on there, man?
In short, I don't know. I mean,
I still think it's a role situation.
I agree, and I think I kind of think if you're going to go a direction on what's going on with DeMaria Franklin, that's the only obvious direction, right? Because you brought this point up multiple times that he can't be the guy handling the ball every possession. Like he can't be Kendrick Davis, and that's where he kind of thrives at, is handling the ball and and being exactly what Kendrick Davis is without the 3-point shooting, and he can't have that role on this team. So I don't know. I don't know if it does take. Like I don't know if he does become a huge piece of this team, because I think he does need the ball in his hand. I think he does need to be able to have the freedom to drive and run the offense to a certain extent to be successful, and that's just not going to happen.
And it's kind of funny. Like I talked to you about this off air, but it almost feels like Penny Hardaway, especially in that Tulsa game. And there's been a couple other times during the season where he's tried to get that roll out of him and try to let DeMaria bring the ball up. It feels like Penny Hardaway's almost heard what we've been saying about it, and the ball's in his hand coming up, and then he'll just pass it right off to Kendrick Davis, and nothing really happens from it. It's just it's bizarre to see.
I think when you're not used to playing that role this season, and then you get kind of pushed back into it of go run the floor, then you're all messed up.
Right.
You know, you don't know, like, okay, do I become
and then you
the
don't
primary ball handler?
You don't want to bite off too much, right? You don't want to bite off more than you can chew,
right.
and
you don't
be detrimental to the offense.
Exactly. And I think he's seen that at times this year with the turnovers, like you mentioned, and that could be an issue with it too. It's like he's just trying to get the ball out of his hands and play off the ball, and that's just not really his style. So I think it can be figured out. I think it's a possibility, but it just doesn't look like it's flowing at this point at all.
Yeah, it just doesn't quite click.
Right.
With the role he would have to play. I mean, there's other Keonte Kennedy's filled it, Elijah McCadden's filled it, Jaden Hardaway can fill that role as a supplemental offensive player.
Right, and those guys are 3-and-D guys.
Yes.
As far as Jaden and
it's
Keonte.
kind of funny because coming in here, they're not 3-and-D guys. You don't look at those guys and say they're 3-and-D guys.
But that's what they've been.
But that's what they've molded
right.
into.
And DeMaria is not a 3-and-D guy.
I don't think he's as capable of those guys as molding into it because he's never shot the three ball well.
He's not,
and he can play some defense. Like I don't want to take that away.
He's a good defender,
and he's sizable. He can go get rebounds as a guard. But the offense is something we expected to be almost instant, right? When he came back, like because Penny's talking about he's the third best guy.
Yeah, we're thinking he's going to average like 10 points a game. That was my expectation.
It hadn't been close. It hadn't been close.
Hadn't been in it.
Now Tigers right now sitting third, I believe. 7-2 in the AAC behind, or though tied with Temple,
right?
And Houston obviously in first. I guess I'll bring it up. Regular season title thoughts, and what do you think about them playing against Houston, that matchup, and how that could potentially go?
I mean, at their best, they can beat Houston, and we know that.
What about best on best? Houston's best?
If Houston's best versus Memphis' best,
yeah.
I think it's a tightly contested game.
Right.
Because I think that in those moments and in those situations, for some reason, Memphis steps up and plays to that caliber, to the top teams in the country. So can they go best on best with Houston and win? Absolutely. Can they go best on best with Houston and lose? Absolutely. I think those are the two games that are going to be the most tightly contested games that Memphis plays in the conference this year.
Right. And if we're talking AAC title, regular season title, that's the roadblock. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
And if you split with them, you're gonna unless they took one on the chin like they did against Temple, which I don't necessarily foresee the rest of the way, although things happen.
They've got a pretty favorable schedule.
That's what I'm saying. I just feel like Houston, that's just too big of a roadblock
And
for a regular season.
What do they have, 2 losses?
AAC title. Yeah, two or three. 2? Let me check it.
I think they have 2 losses.
2, 20-2.
20-2, and 1 conference loss. So Memphis would have to beat them at least once.
At least once, and they'd have to drop another one. But you'd have to beat them twice, and you'd have to not lose, and you'd have no room for error.
Yeah, I think it's more likely no than yes.
Yeah, 100%. But Tigers, I think, have firmly put themselves in that number 2 spot.
Right. Even though they're right there with Temple right now, like obviously Memphis has beaten Temple. We know
on the road too. I mean, you got to it counts for something.
We know Temple stole a game from Houston, but I think I don't want to say it's super clear because we don't know. But with the way that Memphis is playing right now, I think they're pretty obviously number 2 behind Houston.
Yeah.
Because Temple's not going to play that way every game.
Tulane behind you, Cincinnati, UCF has dropped. They're 4-5 in conference.
Right.
So you're not overly scared about them going forward. So I think it feels like the number 2 spot for them to lose.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And wasn't that the conversation coming into the year too?
Yeah.
Right.
Number 2. I mean, that's pretty much how it was framed from the beginning of the year. Is like who's the 3rd, 4th best team in the conference?
Right.
Because we kind of felt like the whole time that Memphis was number 2, and like I mentioned, they had that section in the middle of the season where it was kind of like, oh man, are they really like the 4th or 5th best team in this conference? But now they've reestablished themselves, and pretty firmly that they're at this point right now today they are the number 2 team.
Isn't it funny though? Like it's interesting at times with the fan base where it's like, jump off the wagon after a loss against Tulane, and then it's hard to reestablish hopping back on that wagon. Now, I think the home crowds for the rest of the year are going to be fantastic because they're some of the best teams in the conference, and they're bigger names, Houston, Cincinnati. Right, I get that. But it's interesting to see how that dynamic is working itself out this year.
That's just fandom, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
like that's any sports fan. Like you're gonna have your.
But here's where I go with this though. They're 17-5.
Right.
They're firmly in a tournament situation right now. Isn't that's what everybody wants? That's what you need as far as the program is concerned when Penny Hardaway took over? I mean, that's exactly where you want to be positioned. Now, granted, people thought, 1, 2, 3 seed, national championship, Final Four. Like, I get that. But this team is by far, and I mean by far, like a landslide, by far in the best position that they've ever been at this point in the year under Penny Hardaway.
Absolutely.
And I don't think it's close. It's not, you can't deny it.
Yeah, because at this point last season is kind of when they started surging.
Yeah,
but it was still like, it felt like the wheels could fall off at any time.
Any loss was going to completely put the death nail in any tournament hope.
And now it feels like it feels more firm. It feels more solid. It feels like, okay, they can continue.
Like, even if you lose against Tulane, or South Florida, right? Like, you're not putting that death nail in there,
no,
right? They still have
not.
17 wins. They're going to cruise to 20. I mean, this is the best we've seen at this point in the season under Penny Hardaway, and it's interesting. It's interesting to see. And I get, like, from a talent perspective, the excitement around the program. You still have Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams, but they're established. They're known. People understand what they're going to bring night to night. And you don't have the 5-star crazy talent.
Sensation.
Right. So maybe that's part of the excitement where people, always had that hope moving down the line. And now everybody just sort of knows this is what they are.
But, I mean, I feel like it's a lot better to be established and to know what you have than to just be fingers crossed that it's going to click at some point. And that's what this team is.
Last year, they were 11-8 at this point in the season.
That's so crazy.
It's not even close,
No.
guys.
The year before that, they were 9-6.
It's not, guys. Yeah. It's not close.
No.
When you look at just year to year and where they're at in the bracketology, it's night and day. And again, we know about the established players and how much experience they have, yada yada yada. But 17-5 at this point in the season, I don't know if there's a lot of people around the country that were picking them any better than that.
No.
Right? Like,
no.
If you were going wins and losses from the top of the schedule to now, where would you be? Really, but with the preseason outlook of this team, would you have them at 17-5? I don't think there's a lot of people that would.
No, this is pretty close to best case scenario.
Now, game to game, there's been some situations where you can sort of pick and
overall, when you take a full look and a full view at it, it's like this is really good.
Yeah, they're
it's
in
really
a good spot.
Yeah,
and potentially next 3 games you get to 20-5. And they're getting AP votes. They got 10 this week. They're getting more every week as long as they keep winning. I mean, this is. I know that doom and gloom can hit any day with any of these losses, with any of these landmines. But damn,
yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have to take that bird's eye view and just look at it as a whole and look at the resume and say, damn, okay, this is well managed,
right? Because I think if they win the next 3 and they are 20-5, then I would say you're almost certainly a top 25 matchup against Houston.
I would imagine.
I think that first one's on the road also.
I would imagine.
I think that one's at the Fertitta
I would
Center.
think. No, we'll have to see. Yeah. We'll have to see how the people dropping out of the AP and how people vote.
But with the way that top 25 teams are losing right now,
right?
The landscape of college basketball, this is easily one of the most years with the least amount of parity of just like. Everything's so close. You know what I mean? Usually it's like there's 3 or 4 teams that it's like these teams are probably going to be in it in the end. And this year it's like maybe Purdue is that team this year.
No. But how can you say that with Matt Painter and what his history as the Purdue head coach, right? Like when they get in the tournament, in Big Ten in general, you just know that the Big Ten generally falls short when it comes to tournament play. I look at the landscape of college basketball. It's interesting, man. Like I think it's a bigger group than normal where I could sit and say, okay, everything breaks right, that's a national championship team. Right. Everything breaks right, that's a national championship team. Because people wanted to put even Alabama on that pedestal in the SEC, and they got absolutely smoked.
By Oklahoma.
Smoked by 30 points against Oklahoma, who's at the bottom of the Big 12. The Big 12 is crazy this year, by the way. But
who are some of the teams that you guys look at nationally and say these guys are legitimate national title contenders?
I think just by definition, Purdue.
I think Houston's definitely still in that
I still think Alabama's in that conversation. Yeah. That was just a bad shooting day.
Is Tennessee?
They're
regular season Rick, man. Yeah, I just don't know how to feel.
I don't know.
I just don't know offensively if they can.
That's always.
It's managing an NCAA tournament and winning that many games in a row with an offense that sputters as much as he always does. I can't see it. A team that is going to be, and I think less slept on now, but I was talking about it last week. Baylor is still. I know that they had some struggles at the beginning, out of conference, early conference schedule. The Big 12's a beast, but that guard play, I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
And you can count on that from Scott Drew and what he brings to the table. But they give me a lot of hope as a team who can make a deep run in the tournament. Right.
And I think, like you're saying, you can pretty much go up and down the top 25 and make a scenario where that team could probably end up in the Final Four or as a potential national champion because there's just not much separate. No one's created just an immense amount of separation that we're so used to seeing in college basketball.
I think it's a massive group. I really do.
I agree. Yeah. I think it's as wide open as I can ever remember seeing it.
Parity. We want parity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what it's for. That's what it's about.
All right, Gabe, we're going to take a quick break, and then Kenny is going to bring us back in. He's got 5 questions for us about the Memphis basketball team, about Penny Hardaway, that he wants to ask us. So, like I said, take a quick break. We'll be right back and hear what Kenny has for us. What's up, guys? I'm so excited to announce that we have partnered with Coaching for Literacy, and you can read more about them at coachingforliteracy.org or follow them on social media at Coaching for Literacy. Your subscription to Bluff City NIL is 100% tax deductible because of our partnership together. Thank you for supporting Memphis Tigers student athletes and helping promote the monumental cause of childhood literacy.
Welcome back to On the Bluff. Gabe and Christian, I got 5 pressing questions for you guys about the Memphis Tiger basketball program. Honestly, man, like we can sit here and we can discuss the SMU and Tulsa game, and those games matter because they're on the schedule. But I think most Tiger fans are more concerned about just where are the Tigers right now, and what's the kind of the 30,000-foot view of their favorite basketball team. So I want to throw some questions out there to you and get y'all's opinion on them.
Good
ready?
deal. Let's ride.
Bet.
All right. You guys have kind of broken down the schedule already, but in your opinion, where do you think the Tigers' record stands at the end of the regular season?
So let's see, 17-5 right now.
Right.
2 games against Houston. So we got Tulane, South Florida, Temple, UCF, Houston, Wichita State, Cincy, SMU, Houston.
Right.
To end the year.
So what is that? 31.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games left regular season.
So 31.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, man. 9 games only in
Yeah.
the regular season. This season has flown
It
by.
goes by fast. So 17-5, 9 games left.
Let's go. You want to go game by game real quick and just do a win-loss?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, Tulane.
Win.
I think they win that one at home.
Okay, so 18-5, South Florida.
Win.
At South Florida.
I'll take a win.
I think I'll say they win that one.
Okay, so 19-5, Temple at Memphis.
They win that one.
Take a win.
Okay, 20-5, UCF at Memphis.
At Memphis. This is an interesting one because
I think UCF. I think UCF might get them in this. But I don't know. UCF
at
is
home,
playing so bad.
at
and
home they're
Memphis
not playing well. I mean, on the road they're
Yeah.
not playing well.
I'll
take a
I'll
win.
say Memphis wins that one.
What'd you say, Gabe?
I'll take a win.
Win.
All right, so that's 21-5.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, then they got the big one, February 19th
L.
at Houston.
L
Loss.
at Houston.
Loss
Loss.
at Houston.
Okay.
Scheduled L.
Yeah. Agreed.
Until proven otherwise.
Agreed.
All right, so what is that, 21-6?
Yeah.
Okay, at Wichita State.
They win that one.
It's interesting. I think Wichita State has a couple of things that could bother them. I'll take a win, though. I'll take a win.
22-6 at home against Cincinnati, February 26th.
I think they lose.
That's,
I think they lose.
that's
that
one
game.
I'll chalk up a L.
Yeah.
I know we're agreeing a lot, but I'll chalk up a L for that one.
You got to explain why that's an L.
So here's where I'll go with that is I think that first game, and I think the Tigers did a really, really good job of guarding the three-point line.
shooters.
And I understand at home, generally speaking,
They're 10-0 at home this
you
year.
shoot
That is
better.
true.
You shoot better, generally speaking. You know, Cincinnati should have shot better in that game.
Right.
But I feel like Cincinnati, the revenge factor, all those three-point shooters, I think Wes Miller comes back with a better plan.
Have they said anything on Landers? Was he okay?
What's the situation with that?
That was wild. It looked terrible,
Now,
his knee injury,
if
but he
he-
came back and played.
Oh, he did end up coming back in that game. Okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say if
But-
he's out, then I would say it's a win for Memphis. But I don't know. I'm
And-
with Gabe. I think the shooting of Cincinnati can bust at any minute.
Yeah,
And if they hit, it's gonna be hard for Memphis to keep up.
25% at home is not something. I even on the road in FedEx Forum, I don't think they'll shoot that bad. And I do think at that point in the season, when you're looking at Cincy and Wes Miller and what they want to create, they're going to be playing for their tournament lives, right? They're going to be playing for everything
Right.
at that point in the season, and that's going to be a win they can hang their hat on. I'll lean to Cincy on that one. I'm
just surprised because Memphis is notoriously, the last time they lost at home was against SMU last year.
Yeah. So I'm between. The reason I said the loss against Cincinnati is because I was between South Florida and Cincinnati. The South
so you
Florida
think they're
game,
going to lose one of those games?
I think they're going to lose one of those games.
Okay. All right. SMU at SMU.
Win.
Okay. Then March 5th, last game of the year.
This becomes tough.
This is a great man. I'm telling you, the Cincinnati at home and the Houston game at home on March 5th are those Sunday at 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock games, and those are. I expect the FedEx Forum to be just just the energy in that place is going to be wild for both of those games. Final game of the regular season versus Houston in Memphis at 11 a.m.
Memphis wins that game.
I say Memphis wins that game. I really do.
Memphis wins that game.
At home, last game of the year.
Right.
Got to prove a point heading into tournament play.
And if we're correct,
let's
about it,
ride. Let's see what they got.
They've already lost to Houston, and it's kind of the revenge factor of the game. Because I think if they do lose to Houston in that first game, I still think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a hard-fought game that's going to come down to the wire. And so the revenge factor on potentially that game, like you said, at home, last game of the year, your last chance before the conference tournament to make a statement, and that's the perfect time to do
Sort
it.
of a little sidebar here. I think at that point, when you look at Malcolm Dandridge, him getting off the shelf, maybe he'll be back to a little more full speed, running the floor a little better. And I think if you have that full speed, everybody gelling together last game of the year with that type of raucous crowd that'll be at FedEx Forum, I'll chalk that up as a win.
Yeah.
All right, so that would put them at the end of the regular season for both of y'all, since y'all both are in agreement. That would put them at 24-7 on the year, 14-4 in the AAC.
Sounds about right.
I think
Number 2 spot.
I think 8 losses is their max.
Right. I think that's fair.
Absolute max. Say if they drop USF in Cincinnati, or I don't think they're going to lose to Wichita State, but maybe the Tulane could be. So I think 8 is their max losses.
So if we say 24-7, I mean, like, in terms of a regular season, what grade do you give a Memphis Tiger team that's 24-7 and 14-4 in the conference at the end of the regular season?
We're taking out pluses and minuses, right? Are we doing pluses and minuses?
What does that mean, plus and minus?
Like
B
in the
plus,
grade,
B
I would say
minus,
if
A
we do plus and minus, I'd say like a B plus.
B plus?
I would say A minus. Just, I mean, come on.
That's-
when you look at the way
because
this roster is constructed,
that is like the max of what anyone expected out of them.
right?
No one
and
expected this team to go 28-3 or something like that.
if you start getting into that C territory, that's you're below average.
right,
You're not reaching the peak of what your team could potentially be. If they get to that mark right there, yeah, that's
good of a season as it could have been.
it's fantastic.
I mean, that puts them at – they've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 game winning streak, a 3 game winning streak, and that would put them at a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 game winning streak. Then add in win, loss, win, win. So I mean, they would be like 3 separate places in the season where they've had 5+ winning
Right.
streaks.
Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
It is, and that's what I was talking about in the last segment. Talk about that overlook, that big view of where they're at, even at 17-5. You cannot be mad with the overall result. Game to game, sure, we can talk about it.
Yeah,
we
you
can
can pick
discuss
that
it.
apart.
You can go find things that are wrong,
Yeah.
but 17-5, 17-5.
That's right. All right, second question is this. This Memphis team, at its peak, can go how far in the NCAA tournament?
That's all dependent on seeding. So here's the thing. You get in that 8-9 game, I think maybe one win, and then you're out. 7-10, I think you could start to get into some interesting territory if you're in that type of seed line.
Let's just for the purpose of this, say they're 7 seed going into the tournament.
I'll still lean on the side of one
Round of
game and out.
32.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll lean on the side of first
I think
weekend.
The absolute ceiling, like best case scenario, is they could be a Sweet 16. But if they play perfectly in those first 2 tournament games as a 7 seed or 10 seed, I think they could be a Sweet 16 team, because I think they could have an upset game.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Like, I think if they get in the tournament, they're probably around a 32 team.
I get concerned in a tournament situation, one, with the other team, like when you're playing a high seed in that second round, that high end talent, some of the pieces that are going to be around that high end talent, you get concerned about
it's
how
all matchup based, right?
Can Keonte Kennedy show up? Can Elijah McCadden show up? A lot of these guys, as much as experience as they have, they don't have tournament experience.
Right.
So,
but then it becomes also, like I say, with it being matchup based, like, do you face a team with a guard that can shut Kendric Davis down? Because if you do, you're screwed.
Yes, very true.
So who knows? But I'm with you. I kind of see round of 32 being the likely landing spot. But if everything breaks right, they could be a Sweet 16.
But I think if you're in the, and this is sort of goes without saying, you said 7 seed, let's say perfect situation 7 seed. If they're in the 8-9 game, that's one and out.
Right.
One and out at the best, in my opinion.
All right,
I don't
I agree.
and I know what they did against Gonzaga last year, but that was a lot of high end talent on that
Right.
Tiger team, and a lot of guys that had
Right.
stuck around for a while.
Because if they have to play a 1 seed, then And I mean, they could lose in the first round on an 8-9 seed.
Yeah,
because those
for
are
sure.
usually very evenly matched teams. So.
But I say they get round of 32 and then out is my.
I agree.
My pick.
I think that's what I see too. Is
Historically, the second place in the AAC gets the 8 or 9 seed. So let's say they come in as an 8 or 9 seed again. They win that first game, then they face up against the number 1 seed in their bracket.
Yeah.
Here are the top 4. Here are the 4 number 1 seeds in terms of the rankings right now.
Right.
I want y'all to tell me how they match up. All right.
Okay.
Purdue.
Bad.
I don't like it.
Zachy Day.
Too big, and even if Malco is completely healthy, that's just a mismatch.
That's a bad matchup for them.
What about Tennessee?
I think they match up well with Tennessee.
What Tennessee are you seeing? Right. That's it.
I mean,
how are those guards playing? What's
Right.
Vescovy doing?
Right.
Ziegler off the bench.
Ziegler,
If he's cooking, it's
Right.
different. But we know that Tennessee. I'm going to say this before even hearing the next 2 teams. Of all of the top 4 you're going to mention, that's probably the one I'd say they match up best with. And also rivalry game, you have a little bit of back and forth there.
Except for the next one would be Houston, who you're saying they're going to split with in the regular season.
I was going to say this too. I think their best case scenario would be playing Houston in the second round. I that's what I think.
And then and then the number 4 seed would be Alabama. And
Which
so
they took them to the wire.
They took them to the wire.
But I don't necessarily think they match up well against Alabama. I think they played a really good game on the road, but I think Brandon Miller is such a problem, and that Alabama as a whole just has so much experience, and they have so many playmakers on that team that is a tough matchup.
I feel the same about Houston though in a tournament neutral site situation. That's where I'm coming with this.
I agree with you in that sense, but I kind of think the same thing that you were saying with Tennessee, like the rivalry game, the knowing each other well. I think that, in my opinion, that applies more so to Houston because you've seen them twice that year. Let's say theoretically they split with them, so you know that you can beat that team, and that's a different kind of psyche to go into a game with, knowing you can go onto that court and beat that team.
And I'm going to tell the truth a little bit, my truth at least, on that Alabama game. On the road, 3-point game. I get it, 91-88. Understand. They did a lot of that in the last minute, just scrapping and clawing. That's why that game was as close as it was in the end of the day. I don't know in that second half if I ever really had that burning thought that they were going to pull through and win that game on the road.
Completely agree. I never felt like they were going to
win that game. Because they really just scrapped, clawed, found a way to get that within 3 at the end.
Right. It felt like they were having a fight. It felt like they were having to fight so hard just to be in that game.
Right.
To have it as a 2 or 3 score game.
Right. But of those 4 for me, it would be Tennessee is the one I think they match up best, because I also think that when you're working against regular season Rick,
right,
and you're dealing with his past,
right,
and what we've known to be,
but that'd be a highly defensive game.
Yes, I think so.
I mean, I think we can be pretty frank about it and say Tennessee and Alabama probably won't be in those number 1 spots because the SEC play just beats each other up.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So it wouldn't surprise me if Tennessee and Alabama both took on a couple more losses, maybe 1 or 2 more losses. I mean, they're both really good teams. To me, the team that freaks me out the most, if you have to play them in the second round, is Purdue. You play Purdue, it's over.
Yeah, you play Purdue, you're not winning.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Do you think that's a win for? I mean, is that a going into this season with this team?
Yes.
A round of 32 with a chance of going to a Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Is that a feather in Penny's cap?
If anybody thought that this team was going to be a Sweet 16 team before the year, they were either looking through blue glasses or lying to you.
I wholeheartedly 110% agree. I mean, with the teams last year and in the past, you had the high-end number 1 recruit, top 10 recruit talent. I love Kendric Davis. I love DeAndre Williams. They're both well into their 20s, right?
Yeah.
And they have experience, but you just look at the talent on this team, it's not what it was in the past. And I think that would be an overwhelming win. And I think even the regular season record we're talking about is an overwhelming win with this group.
I mean, what does that tell you? Well, never mind. That's another question.
I got you.
I was going to go to the next question. All right, let's do the third question. You mentioned Kendric Davis. Is Kendric Davis the best player Penny has had at Memphis?
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, from a talent perspective, no. Obviously
not NBA talent.
But
I don't think that's what we're discussing.
But is he
right?
the best college player that Penny's ever coached? Yes. I think so.
My gosh.
I mean, what are your Jeremiah Martin?
It
Precious
becomes tough
Achiuwa,
with me because it's
Jalen
like
Duren.
if you're talking about the sum of every single game and that points per game average at the end of the year and what he provides game to game, yes. But like if I'm looking at particular stretches of basketball and what guys were able to do in stretches of good basketball for the Tigers, I think Jalen Duren is up there as well.
Yeah, Duren.
Like what
Duren
he did
is,
last year down the stretch and that in getting them into the tournament and how dominant he was, I think I would lean there because I think that the ceiling was higher when he was playing at that level.
The only reason I say Kendric Davis over Jalen Duren is because of the position that he plays, and I think he can impact the game more. I think he can impact the game more as a point guard than a center, and that's pretty obvious basketball knowledge, but that's why I lean that way. And it feels like, especially in college basketball, if you have the best player on the floor, you obviously
especially guards,
you have a much better chance of winning the games. And with the way that Kendric Davis gets to the foul line, with the way that he can pass, with the way that he's been shooting as of late, I think Kendrick's the best player.
I do think also when we discuss this, you have to have the built-in crutch of Kendrick he's been in college for a long time. He has a lot of experience under his
if
belt.
Jalen Duren stayed in college 4 years, he absolutely would be.
That's interesting, man. That's a tough question. I'm gonna lean for the stretch last year what Jalen Duren was able to do, but I agree with your point about if you take Kendric Davis off this team, what are they? If you took Jalen Duren off that team last year, what are they? I don't know if I think the difference, the value that Kendric Davis brings to this team is a little bit more than what Jalen Duren brought to last year's team.
Right. And I think Precious was awesome, but it never really felt like with him being so limited offensively, it never felt like Precious can just go carry you on his shoulders and win a game. Not that he didn't, because there was a game or two.
I remember saying get him a touch every time down the floor.
Like the Tulane game. I don't know if you remember that win to overtime. I think he had like 28 and 22 or something like that. So could he do it? Yes. But every game, did you feel like since we have Precious, we can win this game? Not as much so as
yeah, and he was also with Precious playing out of position in a lot of ways. So it was a hard eval and hard for him to fit into
and he was 18
role
years
that
old.
he expected to fit in. And that's yes,
yeah,
correct.
That's so interesting. All right. Question number 4: what has Penny proven to you as a coach this year?
Go ahead.
I would say that even with what honestly is like a patchwork group of guys that have never played together, that he can still have success. And I know Penny has his shortcomings in certain areas, and that people like to harp on those areas and say that, his in-game coaching lacks at times, or his rotations, or whatever people want to say. At the end of the day, like Gabe's saying, if you look at the whole of what this year is, 17-5 at this point in the season, with the least amount of talent that he's ever had, maybe minus minus his first year, but the least amount of talent he's had in recent years, with really only 2 proven guys at this level, and Elijah McCadden, Keonte Kennedy, bringing all these guys in, and your 2 guys that have been in the system the longest, and Alex Lomax and Malcolm Dandridge, are out. And your other guy that's been in there the longest, Jaden Hardaway, missed a long stretch of games due to injury. So, to me, and I think I've said this multiple times, in my opinion, this is undoubtedly the best coaching
100%.
that Penny has ever done.
And for me, what I would sum it all up to is Penny has shown me he's capable of change. Right? You have the IARP investigation. You have to deal with all these different ways of recruiting. People wanted you to get older. You got older. They wanted you to get a true point guard. You got a true point guard. They wanted you to shorten rotations. You shorten rotations. They wanted you to play more offense. Through what we've seen lately in conference play, they've played more offense. So it just shows me that he is truly moldable, and he is still learning. And I think a lot of the lessons he's learned to this point have really come to fruition. And I agree with your sentiment, and it's kind of hard to dispute considering where they are at this point in the season. This is his best coaching job. I mean, you can sit there and try to poke holes in that all you want, but the truth of the matter is, from start to finish, or from start to where we are right now, Penny has managed this schedule, these players, better than he ever has.
All right. Last question. Moving forward past this year, not that we want to look past this year too much, but how do you see Penny building his teams in the future? Do you see him continuing using the transfer portal like he did last year, or do you see him focusing in more in high school recruiting like he's done this year?
Well, now that he's got Mikey and JJ, I think you're going to see a transition back to high school to a certain extent. But I think it's going to be more of a mix than we've ever seen. That's what he's showing us right now. He can do it with both, and I think you need both to be successful in college basketball. You need to have that experience mixed in with the high-end talent. Absolutely. And you say that the teams that are successful right this second and that got really successful really fast, I look at the team that I would point to immediately is Alabama. They brought Mark Sears is old. You have some other guys in there that have some experience. Javon Quinterly's still there.
Right.
And then you mix that in with Noah Gurley. You mix that in with Brandon Miller. I think that's the mold that he's going to go with going forward.
Right. I think that's the recipe for success in college basketball, truthfully. And I think this year more than any has taught him that. That may sound kind of weird because you're like, well, how did he, why not in the years past when he got these top recruiting classes and they didn't work out? Because now he's seen that less is more.
Mm-hmm.
He has less than he's ever had, and he's having the most success that he's ever had. But I think also at the same time, and I don't think he thinks this, but with what we're saying about where they're going to go in the tournament, they're not a Final Four Elite Eight team. Penny Hardaway would never say that.
You want to strive to that.
Though. Right, and he never should say that they're not, because he's the coach of the team and he should believe in his team. But I don't think they have that kind of ceiling, and I think at the end of this year, when it's all done and wherever they end up landing in the tournament, I think he'll look back and see, okay, the veterans got us to this point, the young guys got us to this point. Could be the same point, could both be around the 32 teams. So we have to find the perfect mixture of that to take us to the upper echelon.
Yeah.
We have to, and I 100% am with you on this. I think it's a mixture. I think it has to be a mixture. I think you have to have veteran leadership, or you have just everybody going in 100 different directions. You have to have established veteran guys with leadership, and you have to have the guys with the high, top-end, elite talent that in that tournament, because they're probably going to be rocky at the beginning of the year, more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
But when that time comes, they're basically sophomores at that point.
Right.
They've played a full season. They're basically sophomores. That's when those guys take you to the next level. So I'm pretty certain that he figures that out this year and finds a way to meld those two things.
When it comes to having all freshmen on a team, how many times do we have to see John Calipari and a team coached by him sort of fall flat on its face, even if they're a high seed coming to the tournament, because they don't have that experience? You have to have that mixture. And also, one little sidebar to this is I sort of wonder, with all the point guard issues he had following Jeremiah Martin, is he going to want – and I know Mikey Williams is going to be a guy who's on ball a lot, and that's just sort of who he is. Watch him the other night, too. He looked pretty good in the 19 points in that game.
Yeah.
Against Bishop Gorman, I believe. But I sort of wonder going forward if he wants to have more experienced guys on ball because of what he's seen with success with Jeremiah Martin and Kendric Davis. Is that something that he can put two and two together and understand, okay, maybe we can develop a younger guy and keep him off ball early in the season, and then later in the season he can take over as a primary ball handler. But I think you always need an experienced guy who can take over that role and bring that young guy along.
Absolutely.
So we'll see.
Well, the Tigers will possibly have that next year if Alex decides to take his last year of eligibility.
Mercy me, man.
Yeah.
Mercy me.
Experience for sure.
That's a lot of experience, yes.
He might. I don't know if he does have a last year of eligibility unless he goes after
medical hardship
or something. But
something like that.
Next year, the on-ball guys will be Mikey and Tyler Johnson.
Right.
So two freshmen. So we'll see. All right, let's move on. We got a new we got the segment that we started last week, the Hot Three.
That's right.
Let's do that again, boys. You ready?
Let's get it going.
All right, let's talk about championship weekend, man. What a big weekend in the NFL. What are your guys' thoughts?
If you don't care about the NFL, tune out now because this is probably going to get lengthy. That's what I think.
That's fair.
Let's breeze over this NFC Championship really quick. Let's get this out of the way.
See, man, I don't want to breeze over it
Why?
ridiculous because I thought Kyle Shanahan did an unbelievable job with a third-string quarterback all year.
What crazy.
And what he was able to do for that long was unbelievable. But once that guy got hurt, boy, that game was cooked.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Did you
to
see the
watch.
news that it came out that Brock had a torn UCL?
Yeah. my
Everybody's like, what is going on? Come back. What's wrong with
And
you?
then Josh Johnson goes down, and you're
Right.
like, holy mackerel, man. And then Christian McCaffrey,
Looks like he's
going to
put
be
on the helmet with the mic.
going to be a emergency quarterback. I mean, that turned on its head really quickly, but the Eagles are legit.
They're
man.
legit.
And we can talk about, okay, well, if Brock Purdy stays healthy in that game, it's a different game. But let's talk about why he's not healthy. The Eagles get
Right.
pressure on the quarterback at a ridiculous rate. They led the league in sacks. They were like second in pressure percentage.
Right.
Hassan Reddick, people don't even know. They have multiple guys with double-digit sacks, but I played against Hassan Reddick at Temple. He terrorized us at home. We ended up winning the game late. I think Dorsey's had a long run that sort of sprung us and got us up out of the hole we were in. But Hassan Reddick was unbelievable.
And
what
he's
were
been
they-
awesome down the end of the end stretch of the season.
What in the early part of that game, though? What was Kyle Shanahan doing? I talk about him scheming up and exploiting matchups. He tried to block him with a tight end on that first sack, and he tried to block him with Jawan Jennings on that second sack on a rollout. It's just like, man, at some point you're going to have to respect that pass rush, and it didn't feel like they respected it enough early in that game.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The Eagles, their secondary has been talked about all year, right? James Bradbury, Darius Slay been playing awesome. C.J. Gardner-Johnson's back. Avonte Maddox came back in this game. I think they were the number one secondary this year, pretty sure.
Right.
But no one really talks about their front seven, and I know at points in this season they've had a somewhat leaky run defense. But when you look at, Jordan Davis was hurt for a stretch. I believe Fletcher Cox missed some games. I believe Javon Hargrave missed some games. And those are three great interior defensive linemen. Javon Hargrave, one of the most underrated defensive linemen in the NFL. I would honestly say the same thing with Fletcher Cox. I don't feel like he's
Fletcher borderline Hall of Famer at this point.
Yeah, I feel like he hasn't gotten.
Is he even borderline at this point?
I feel like he hasn't gotten nearly enough love in his career because he is one of the best defensive tackles over the last decade plus.
Playmaker and just normal,
just straight up
run of the mill, stopping the run.
Yeah, and then like you mentioned with Hassan Reddick, he's been unblockable.
16 sacks, and no one knows about it.
Right, he's been unblockable off the edge, and I think 12 and a half of them came in the last 7 games. Pretty sure.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
So he's been off the charts. I think their weakest point is their backers.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how Kansas City plays against that. But to me, that's the only weak point on Philadelphia's team is their backers, because offensive line, arguably the best in the league.
The best complete team in the NFL, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Secondary, best in the league. Offensive line, arguably the best in the league. They've got a great trio of running backs: Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, one of the best 1-2 punch receiver combos in the league. Dallas Goedert, to me, one of the most underrated tight ends in the league. So they're loaded everywhere. My only concern for them moving forward is Jalen Hurts. Just he didn't look like himself.
He's got the shoulder injury.
I know, and that's why.
And the throwing of the football is a little bit down, but their O-line can pick up for him. I mean, the walk-in. I knew that it was going to be a pretty lopsided game relatively early. I didn't know Brock Purdy was going to get hurt like that and it was going to get that lopsided. But I had a feeling the Eagles were going to win very early after that walk-in touchdown by Miles Sanders. Where you have a bunch of double teams. There's an inside zone play, and you just see Lane Johnson and
Jason
Kelce, Isaac Suamalo, all these guys, Jordan Mailata just rolling the 49ers front, which was one of the best in the league all year, just rolling them off the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a physicality, and I think, and we'll get to the AFC Championship game as well, but I think when you look at the NFC versus the AFC has all the quarterbacks, Allen, Burrow, Mahomes. Yeah. NFC plays with some physicality, man.
Which it's always
that rough and tumble game against the Cowboys versus the Niners, and then that game in particular, that really physical.
It's always been reversed for the majority of our lifetimes, like the NFC's always had the top flight elite quarterbacks, and the AFC's always kind of been the rough and tough, gritty division. Because obviously they had Brady and Manning, but outside of that, it was more like gritty and grimy teams.
The Steelers, right? Like,
and now it's kind of flipped to where the NFC is a little bit more physical, and the AFC is a little bit more high flying. So just the natural progression of football. But I'm with you. I thought Philadelphia was going to win this game relatively easy, but I thought it was going to be because of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
Right.
Because if there is a weakness that the 49ers have, it's their secondary.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't – I mean, I think they were like 17th or 18th this year, which I think part of that is because teams know they can't run the ball against them, so they have to kind of divert to passing the ball.
Right.
But when you look at – what they have in Charvarius Ward and Lenore on the outside, they're solid corners, but they're not great. They're exploitable, especially when you have top flight receivers. Mm-hmm. So I was expecting Philadelphia to win because I thought they had that matchup, and they just ended up out-physicaling the most physical team in the NFL.
And Jalen was sailing some balls. Let's just be honest. I mean, he
wasn't
himself.
High balls.
Even the one to Devontae Smith was a little bit high, and Devontae had to go make a play. And obviously that wasn't a catch. We get that, and it ended up being a touchdown. That did not decide the game, though. No. I don't want to hear about officiating on that particular. We'll get to officiating, but I don't want to hear about it there. But he was sailing balls, and he's just lucky in a lot of ways that he has the most complete team in football.
Absolutely,
right now.
But even his legs, he's more hesitant to run the ball right now, and Nick Sirianni's more hesitant. Shane Steichen are more hesitant to draw up run plays for him right now, because no matter how valuable his legs are, which we know, they cannot afford to lose him as a passer. So they're having to kind of teeter on this line of how much do we run him, how much do we protect him, how much do we just drop back pass. And that kind of worries me because that's not what their offense has been all year.
Now, what'd you think of Burrow-Mahomes, the matchup of the century?
It was a great game.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when people say great games, they look at the score and they're like, it's high scoring, so it was great, because that's just, kind of the generation of football we're in right now. But this was such a chess match between Steve Spagnuolo, Kansas City Chiefs defense coordinator, and Joe Burrow, and what's Cincinnati's offense coordinator's name? I just lost it.
Well, Zach Taylor.
He calls the play. He calls the plays. Yeah. Okay. And then Lou Anarumo, the Cincinnati defensive coordinator, who is extremely underrated, and Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, who run the best, most efficient offense in the NFL. So
but
it was just
Brian Callahan's their OC though.
Callahan, you're right. So it was just 4 great coaches, 4 or 5 great, however many. A lot of great coaches in this game. We know Steve Spagnuolo has been a defense coordinator in huge games before, so you expect him to show up. Anarumo is not shut down, but he's kind of kept this Chiefs offense a little bit more at bay than most teams have been able to. And then you have Bieniemy and Andy Reid, who are the best offensive combo in the league, and then Zach Taylor and Callahan, who don't really get enough credit for how good of a job they've done. So the coaching in this game is so incredible that you kind of know it's going to be a back and forth and give and take, and there's going to be empty possessions, and there's going to be some sloppy moments in the game because of how good the coaching is. But it was an awesome AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
It saved championship weekend.
It's interesting too, because I look at those two. Everybody wants to paint Burrow versus Mahomes, and I get it. They're unbelievable. They're top 3 quarterbacks, top 5 quarterbacks if you want to be mean to them, right? Like they're unreal. They might be top 2, right?
Probably the best.
But they're great. But when I look at that game, that wasn't won by either of them.
No.
Patrick Mahomes didn't turn the ball over very much, and obviously the fumble was the one turnover he had, and that was a big issue. But I think grand scheme of things, it was Spags' defense and the Bengals' defense that kept them in the game.
Absolutely.
I don't even know how to break down this game fully, because there was a lot of weird, nasty situations going on the side. Like I didn't expect the Chiefs defense to show up that way. And then like the officiating there toward the end of the game, which I don't think needs to be the front page news, but it was very bizarre.
Right.
No, and don't give me NFL is rigged. I don't want to hear about that. But
it's a shame that that becomes the story of this game, because this game was awesome.
Right, but like I feel like a lot of the pace of the game was slowed down, and it was just it became a little.
Did you ever feel like
weird back and forth at the end of that game?
Who was going to win the game?
No, not at all.
Those are my favorite games, because usually you can kind of feel like, okay, it seems like this team's going to pull away or this is going to happen. And every time I felt like those moments came up, like Burrow getting the ball back or Mahomes getting the ball back, because the defense keeps getting it back for both of them, and then the defenses stand up for the other team. So it's just like, who's going to end up pulling away? I really thought we were going to see overtime because no one could break kind of that mesh in the middle of who can score first. So it was an awesome game. I thoroughly enjoyed the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, but
we do need to talk about the play.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna play the play for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep.
I want y'all to listen to it, and I want y'all to give me your thoughts on Joseph Asai and just a lot of the other things. Gabe, you talked a lot about it last night. Just give me your thoughts on it, all right?
He's going to go for the he's got the marker, and he's got the out of bounds to stop it. And Osai was hurt as he hit the bench, and a flag's coming in to put him 15 yards closer.
Personal foul, unnecessary roughness, defense, number 58.
And that 15 yards
from the end of the play.
40-yard field goal attempt to go to the Super Bowl.
Oh, and right there at the end,
Gene?
playing great all day and can't make that decision.
Yeah, guys, on this play, you can clearly see that Patrick Mahomes has both feet out in the white.
All right.
now,
Thoughts?
first of all, Tony Romo is getting progressively worse.
He just gets too excited, man.
He's too much, man. He's too much.
Is Greg Olsen the man?
Yeah, Greg Olson's the best.
Dude, he is awesome.
KB and Greg Olsen are
he
fantastic.
Is awesome. Kevin
He's the best.
Burkhardt is really good, but Greg Olsen is amazing. Like I didn't know, Greg Olsen wasn't a guy that showed a ton of personality. Like when
he's
he was
fantastic
playing,
though.
But my God,
Well, what do you mean? You never heard of the Seventh Floor Crew,
third
brother?
leg Greg? Yes, I've heard.
Come
of
on
third
now.
Leg Greg.
What are we talking
when
about?
he was playing in the
He's
NFL.
got personality.
I know. Third leg Greg. Yeah, I know. But man,
Now
no, he's
the play,
he's awesome.
Joe Osai. That's about as bad a decision as you can make. That's what I'll say first. Now, being a former player, that's brutal, man. Because it's not that he wanted to go hurt Patrick Mahomes. No. It's not that he thought that it was going to be anything that would lead to a flag. He's just out there trying to make a play,
playing
right?
100%. And he played.
And he was chasing down. He played well. He played really well.
Game.
And that part sort of that hurts me as a former player because I know he was just trying to make a play, and that becomes tough. Now, that might go down as one of the biggest gaffes in the AFC Championship's history because you give him 15 yards. It's a cold night. The ball doesn't fly near as well.
Right.
I know Harrison Butker has a leg, but when you go from basically what would have been a 55-yarder, 57-yarder to a 40-yarder.
Yeah, well, it was 45-yarder, so it would have been
45.
a 62-yarder.
See, it wouldn't even done that.
They wouldn't even attempt
They wouldn't
it.
even have attempted it. Well, could they have thrown a pass? There was 8 seconds left. They could have thrown a quick.
There was 4 seconds left.
Well, there's 3 after the field goal. So I think there was 8
you're
seconds
right,
left. They could have thrown a little out route and
yeah.
gotten closer, about somewhere high 50s.
Yeah.
And it turns into a 45-yarder to end the game. I mean, that's just it just rips your heart out. That should have gone to overtime, and it didn't because Joseph Osai couldn't hold back.
And to add insult to injury, it looked like he tore every ligament in his knee.
Yeah.
Like, it literally looked like he shredded his knee. Somehow, he stood up and was fine.
His leg sort of like flipped over the bench too. It looked nasty.
It hyperextended really
and he had to
bad.
get an MRI. I think he got it today. We haven't got an update on it, but
I mean, with the way that he got up and was kind of walking around, obviously he didn't play anymore, but I mean, it looked like it was going to be way worse than it actually was. But no, it's gut-wrenching because Joseph Asai played a great game.
Played his ass off.
And he's an underrated defensive end anyway. Like Joseph Asai has been solid all year, kind of being their third rotational defensive end and playing some defensive tackle behind Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson on the edges. But he played a great game, shut down the run game. Kansas City couldn't run the ball. He was chasing Patrick Mahomes all afternoon, and then just gets caught, can't slow down.
It's so hard in those situations. It was a penalty. I don't think
it wasn't a bad call.
What bothers me is when people say, "Well, you don't make that call in that situation. If you make it at the beginning of the game, you make it at the end."
Right, and he clearly
even if it's going to cause the game to go a certain way, you have to make that call But my heart does get ripped out for Joseph Osai. That's a brutal way to end your playoff run this year.
Yeah.
So post game, there was a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, is it B.J. Hill? Is that
B.J. Hill? Yep.
B.J. Hill,
defensive tackle
for Cincinnati, was standing next to Joseph Osai during the press conference.
I thought that was real, man. That was some real stuff.
And then, Gabe, you kind of spoke a little bit last night. There was a video going around of Jermaine Pratt, who, tell me what position he plays. Linebacker for Cincinnati. Had a real reaction. You talked about B.J. Hill's situation being real. It was a very real reaction that he had after the game. And I'm not going to play it because I think that was in a moment where he would probably regret and take back if he could. But he had a very real reaction to that play because of what it did do. It cost them that game, right?
Yep.
That play cost them that game in that moment. What are your thoughts? Break down, as a former player, those two equal but opposite reactions from Jermaine Pratt and B.J. Hill.
I thought B.J. Hill, that was just real, man. That's a guy he's in the same room with, and he shares a video room, a film study room, a D-line room with. I mean, that's just a guy, he's got his back, and he's a young player. B.J. Hill's been around a while. I just thought that was as real as possible, and I think that was a positive reaction. On the other hand, Jermaine Pratt, that was not a positive reaction. I'm not going to act like it was, but I'll always caution people against this. If you're going to put a camera next to the losing team's locker room while they're on the way in after an emotional high like that, emotional low, you're gonna get some nasty reaction. You're gonna get some things that they don't want you to see. And Jermaine Pratt basically said, "Why did you push him out of?" But talking about Joseph Osai, why did you push him out of bounds? We could have gone to overtime, that type of thing. And I think when we see those things, because we don't see them that often, we don't get to peek behind the curtain all that often. So when we see it, there's a lot of people ready to sort of show up and say, "Whoa, that's a terrible mentality. He's a me guy. He's not a good teammate. He's supposed to support his guy in a time of need like that." He just lost the AFC Championship, guys. In the end of the day, I have seen worse reactions. I have seen plenty of situations that have escalated in locker rooms, and there's no issue with that guy being a bad teammate. It just happens. It's an emotional game. They put their life out there. It's their livelihood. It's their job if they lose. And Jermaine Pratt's going to be a free agent this offseason.
Right.
He doesn't know if he'll ever get back to that moment ever again. If he, and people are talking about he missed a tackle on Isaiah Pacheco, whatever he's taking his sort of negative energy out in that moment is sort of to the side. It doesn't make him a me guy or a bad teammate. He's just pissed off. It's not that complicated.
Right.
And the example I'll bring up, AAC Championship 2017. Riley Patterson, remember that? Remember he missed a field goal to end the game. We could have won in that last second. We got in the locker room. People are going after him.
Right.
People are going, I'm not going to name names. People are going after him, calling him types of, B words and H words. They're going after him. At the end of the day, they were still teammates the next day.
Right.
They made up. You kiss, you make up. Once you get out of those emotional highs, all that testosterone running, all that other stuff, coursing, adrenaline rushing through your veins, you start to come down and you start to realize, okay, maybe that wasn't the best thing in the world to do in that moment.
Right.
But it doesn't make you some bad person because you have a reaction toward a teammate that made a very critical mistake in a very critical moment. And for Riley Patterson, you could say, okay, well, what about the guy on the receiving end? How's he going to feel after that? What's Joseph Osai? How's he going to react to his teammate coming after him and acting that way toward him? Riley made it out fine.
Right.
He figured it out. I think Joseph Osai will be just fine.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I don't think anything that Jermaine Pratt or the players in the Memphis locker room going after Riley, they couldn't say anything that would make them feel worse about the situation. They already feel just as bad as anybody else.
It's emotional, man. And
Yeah,
I get tired of the split-second reaction when you get a peek behind the curtain. That's why you don't get a peek behind the curtain all the time.
That's why you don't see that stuff.
Exactly.
And before we move on to our third topic,
are you good?
still going through puberty over here. Before we get on to our third topic, I want to talk about Patrick Mahomes.
Okay.
Because he is, I've said this a lot, I don't know if I said it on camera, but Patrick Mahomes is the best player to ever put on a pair of cleats that's ever played the game of football.
Okay.
I've been saying that for 2 years, and I probably said it way prematurely, but I've never
So,
seen anything like him.
Here's what I'll say. Tom Brady will forever be the best winner and probably the greatest of all time because of what he's won.
Right.
Now, Patrick Mahomes could get up there and get rolling.
Yeah.
But I agree in the sense that, and I ever and never are a long time, so I'm not going to go as far as you, but I'll sort of defend your stance here. When I see Patrick Mahomes do things on the football field, it's unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I'm going to be completely. There's guys in the league though that are trying to do it. Josh Allen can do some of these things, although he turns the ball over too much. Burrow, Herb at times. Justin Herbert can do some amazing things throwing the football. But even if I throw it back to the GOAT and talk about Tom Brady can't do what Patrick Mahomes does. It's not even close. No. And like we can talk about greatest, and I think the issue we run into when we talk about greatest is it's semantics, right? It's
Absolutely.
like what do you think is the greatest?
Right.
What do you think is the best? So I'll defend your position there, but when we're talking about quarterback play, it's a struggle to find someone that I can just automatically say they're better. Aaron Rodgers has done some great things, but he's not better.
Nope.
Game to game. Tom Brady's done some unbelievable winning and some unbelievable things. I don't think game to game he's better. Joe Burrow, same thing. You can keep throwing it back. Dan Marino, same thing.
Yeah, no, here's the thing. If you, let's just say in some fictitious world, you could draft the entire NFL history, Patrick Mahomes is the #1 overall pick of all time. I don't think it's even debatable. I really don't even think it's debatable. I don't think it's close. I don't think there's ever been anyone that can do what he does on a game in and game out basis. And I know people get tired of this. Like you see every time the Chiefs win, like people are talking crap about how much the announcers drool over Patrick Mahomes. It's because he is the definition of a generational talent.
Right.
You don't see this.
Yes. And here's the thing that like I think gets lost a little bit with Patrick Mahomes is when it comes to checking plays at the line, he's grown a whole lot.
Yeah.
And not making mistakes with the ball, he's grown a whole lot. He had his issues early last year and grew out of those. I do think when you talk about a guy like Tom Brady, though, the dimensions that he brings to the game of sort of the leadership part of it and being able to really and truly pace a game and manage a game the right way. I don't know if Patrick Mahomes is on that level in that particular area when we talk about Tom Brady.
That comes with Tom.
But when it comes to talent, it's not remotely close.
No, I agree.
So, but that comes with leadership ability. It does come with your
Tom.
overarching
and I think
and then
he's
going through those moments.
I think he most certainly is a good leader because
that
man throws the team on the back all the time and says,
and that was
"Come
an ankle.
follow me."
That was an ankle issue too. He was dealing with the other day
as a quarterback.
Yeah. So
and it's your play. I mean, you're pushing off of that foot, and he played nearly flawless with Juju out the majority of that game, with Kadarius Toney out the majority of that game, with Travis Kelce already being injured going into that game, with not even a speck of a running game. They could not run the ball at all from start to finish in that game. It doesn't matter.
Yep. He's there.
He's there.
Yep.
Like, all you can liken him to, in my opinion, in sports, is Michael Jordan. Like that's what you see. Like everyone, and obviously I wasn't alive when Jordan was playing, but everyone always, when they talk about Jordan, they say it didn't matter what was around him. It didn't matter the scenario. Nothing mattered because you had Michael Jordan, and if you had Michael Jordan, you could win a championship. The same thing is true with Patrick Mahomes.
He needed help from his defense this weekend, right?
Right.
But he made He made the plays when he needed to make the plays.
Absolutely. It's in every team sport you need teams.
I'll say this with Patrick Mahomes, he's got to do. If we're gonna go Michael Jordan conversation, I think the championships have to be
absolutely
there, and he's got plenty of time to rack up championships.
Absolutely. But here's the thing: you could put Patrick Mahomes on almost any team in the NFL. If you give
who's his OC?
That's what I'm saying. If you give him, let's just say you take Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, and Patrick Mahomes, you put him on any team, he could probably take him to the Super Bowl, and that's absurd. That's absurd to even think that thought about any player.
Now let me throw this back at you.
You can throw it back.
And this could be a really, really long discussion, honestly, and we might have to save it for another day. What if you put Justin Herbert with Andy Reid? What if you put Joe Burrow with Andy Reid?
I don't think.
What if you put?
I don't think they're on Mahomes' level. I don't.
I look at.
I think it's Patrick Mahomes and everyone else.
I look at the situation that Patrick Mahomes got dropped into, with Alex Smith ahead of him for 1 year.
They were already winning 11, 12 games a year.
Arguably, a top 5 offensive game planner of all time. I don't think anybody, Hall of Fame head coach.
Yeah, no one's arguing
and
that.
that had to learn to get over the hump and finally got over the hump with Patrick Mahomes, but he had a long time to get there. I look at the situation he got dropped into, it was tailor-made. Now, he's made a lot of it, and I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but I just feel like that conversation when we get MJ, Tom Brady, just a little bit slower.
Nope.
Just a little bit slower.
Not for me. Because here's the thing. There's something in athletes that are special that very few have.
Right.
That very few have, and it's easy to see. I mean, if you've watched sports your whole
that
life,
it factor.
that it factor,
Yeah.
and it sounds like such a,
cliche. I get it,
but it's so true. In every situation that he's ever been put in with his back against the wall, outside of the Bucks Super Bowl game, which
no line,
nobody could have handled that situation. He has delivered in every single circumstance. He has delivered. Mm-hmm. There's not athletes don't do that. Everybody has an off game, and I'm not saying he hasn't had his off games, but in the big moments, moments when it matters,
threw a pick in overtime last year against the Bengals that let them win the game.
He did, but you know what I'm saying.
Listen,
there's no one else you'd want with the ball in their hands because he is
in the NFL right now. No,
he is untouchable.
In the NFL right now, no. I agree with you. There are guys that I could put close to that, though. There are guys that I could certainly put close to that. I think Burrow, and this is gonna really strike you.
Say Justin Herbert.
This is gonna strike you in a weird way. I think the two old guys, given the right situation, I would love to have them for a game-winning drive.
Absolutely.
Still to this day, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Justin Herbert seems to fall short a tad bit, but I don't think I can't blame it fully on him at this point.
Right. But okay.
But no, I agree with that sentiment. But the Michael Jordan, Tom Brady,
that's just
greatest of all time stuff. It's early in his career. I think we can pace these things out. You can project, and I'm cool with you projecting. But at some point,
but here's the timeout. Am I projecting?
You're projecting it out.
He's been to 5 consecutive AFC championships.
You're projecting it out, though. Him
bit,
winning.
A little bit.
He's only won one.
But his career right now, he would go to the Hall of Fame right now if he retired.
Probably so.
5 consecutive AFC championships.
All pros, MVP.
2 MVPs after this year. He'll have a second MVP.
Yeah,
1 Super Bowl. What has he been in? 2 or 3 Super Bowls? This is his 3rd Super Bowl.
And also, I think
that's nuts.
To your
He's
thing,
27.
Like, he had Tyreek Hill too, and he was gone. He's gone. He's been able to mold himself in different ways. I'm with you wholeheartedly. But those championships, when we get into legacy talk, championships have to be in there.
Absolutely.
You can't have 1 and compete with Tom Brady.
No.
You can't have 2 and compete with Tom Brady. You can't have 3 and compete with Tom Brady.
And that's why I'm not saying that he's surpassed Tom Brady by any means, because he absolutely has. I mean, Tom Brady is in a world of his own. And is Patrick Mahomes on that same trajectory? Absolutely, because he's already 5 straight championships, all these playoff games. His numbers,
they're insane.
His did you see they showed the graphic yesterday? His numbers in AFC Championship games. He has the second most touchdown passes in AFC Championship games already. Brady played in 14 AFC Championship games, 21 touchdowns.
Yep.
Mahomes has played in 5 and has 15.
Yep.
That's absurd.
It is.
That's absurd.
100%.
He is if you had a definition of a generational talent in any sport, Mahomes is number 1.
Point right at him. I'm with you.
So I had to get that off my chest because I'm so tired of so tired of people being like, everybody wants to drool all over this guy and whatever. He's not even that good.
It's worthy of it.
Right? When you get that, you take advantage of it because we'll probably never see this again in our lifetime.
I'm gonna just do a quick sidebar.
Yeah.
I think some of the drooling over Joe Burrow gets to be a little much for me. He's got a lot of swag, and he's a great quarterback, and I'll still put him in top 2, top 3 conversations in the NFL. But calm down just a tad bit.
Give him a minute.
When he didn't have that run game the other night, he threw 2 picks.
Right.
It didn't look that great.
Yeah.
right? So just
and
those weapons around him are great. And he's got an offensive coach. Just
right. With Mahomes,
calm down.
With Mahomes, he's done some of those things yet, and
I
Burrow
think
hasn't yet. Burrow's went to a Super Bowl, but no MVPs, none of these things, none of these accolades, and Mahomes has gotten to that point.
Hall of Fame level talent, but
absolutely.
I can't. When people were saying that Joe Burrow is going to pass Patrick Mahomes if he beats him in the AFC Championship, I'm like, what are you talking? What are you smoking?
Just because the Bengals beat the Chiefs
exactly 3 times. Everybody wants to paint it quarterback. That's NBA legacy talk. We don't do that with the NFL and football. Let's stop that.
Yeah.
But I thought that was ridiculous. But I try to appreciate talent as talent comes. But people, media members, a lot of people who have these discussions day to day and try to be polarizing. Yeah. I just think it sort of
Some people go over the top too
cuts
quickly.
too hard.
Some people go over the top too quickly, and usually I'm a pump the brakes kind of guy. It's just the way with the way that sports go and everything fluctuates. I'm very much so a pump the brakes guy.
But not
one exception to my rule is Patrick Mahomes.
There you go. All right,
Kenny, do we want to jump into this third story, or was that the third story? Do we want to close this out?
Let's get into it just a little bit, because I think it kind of hits home for Memphis fans. Again, I think this is going to be a very quick response, but we woke up this past weekend with an expose on Twitter about the Memphis Grizzlies, their home scorekeeper, and Jaren Jackson.
Oh my God,
so dumb.
Reddit is a disease, man.
So, take it away, Gabe.
I wanted to ask y'all about that, because it's pretty clear to me that Jaren Jackson is a defensive juggernaut for the Memphis Grizzlies. I think they were, when he wasn't playing, they were 22nd in defense in the entire NBA, and now they're number 1 in defense in the entire NBA since he's come back. His numbers are just eye-popping, and this person, turns out was a Golden State fan, went on this long, expose with video. Supposed expose about the fact that the Memphis scorekeepers are adding stats to Jaren's numbers to boost his numbers up for the defensive player of the year. What are y'all's thoughts?
Kenny, you might have like the actual Twitter guy here that put out every one of the 66 blocks at home that he's had this year. There were like 3 that were questionable, and they were questionable still. Like, take away 3 blocks, who cares? He's still going to be the leader in blocks per game whenever he gets eligible. He's still going to be the leader in defensive rating when he's on the floor when he's eligible.
Right.
And he's the best. I'm tired of kicking around this, because I think Jaren Jackson catches way too much from a lot of casual fans that don't watch him night to night.
Right.
Fans of the Warriors, fans of the Celtics, they just go after this guy because when he's on national TV, sometimes he falls flat, and I get that. But the truth of the matter is, if you watch him night to night, he's the best help defender in the NBA right now.
Yeah. And
it's not close. What he does in blocking shots, erasing shots, I don't know why people keep coming in there all that consistently. And that's all this whole expose was, Kenny, right? It's just a guy trying to take credit away from Jaren Jackson Jr. From a big market that doesn't necessarily like him. And I wish I had it off the top of my head, the video of every one of the 66 home blocks that Jaren Jackson Jr. has had. There were maybe 3 in there that were slightly questionable. Yeah. It's just, to be honest with you, if foolish. I'm chalking it up to one word, that one word is stupidity.
Yeah, agreed.
Do you think that Jaren has a really good shot at being the defensive player of the year?
Got to play enough games.
He's a favorite right now, right?
Yep, got to play enough games though. Get to that 60 to 65 mark, and you're good.
Yeah,
yeah.
And the Grizzlies still have to play good ball.
There's a national analyst that I pay attention to a lot in basketball. His name is David Thorpe.
Yep.
And he actually had a tweet yesterday that I really liked that is interesting to me. He says, Tripp is for Memphis what Gobert was for the Jazz. Only he can shoot.
Well,
he should earn some MVP votes. His presence changes the game because he owns the paint on defense. He owns it.
Okay. MVP votes a little... That's a steep hill to climb.
Yeah, that's a little
far for me.
A little far.
Defensive player of the year, I get it, but I'll also say this about the comparison between Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert, of course, defensive player of the year type guy, has gotten them in the past, so you can draw that connection. Jaren Jackson Jr. is like 3 times the player on the perimeter and switches.
Absolutely.
It's not even close.
Absolutely.
Like Rudy Gobert, I remember, what was it, the Clippers series 2 years ago or last year. I can't fully remember. He got exposed because they stretched him out to the 3-point line. You can't do that against Jaren.
No.
You can stretch him out to the 3-point line to keep him out of the paint so you can attack.
But he's still going to guard the perimeter.
You can't just get open threes to Terrence Mann in the corner like the Clippers were doing to Rudy Gobert for an entire series.
Yeah.
You can't just go small ball lineups and expect to have success against Jaren.
Awesome. Good job, boys.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's the hot 3 for the week.
Yeah, I knew that one was going to go long, so sorry, not sorry. But that wraps up this week's episode. Appreciate you guys for joining us. Like Gabe said at the top of the show, not at 56 anymore. You guys will find out next week his next landing spot.
Big news coming soon.
Yep, big news coming soon there. Check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, whatever. It's free. It takes 3 seconds. It helps us out. What?
Yeah. You said it's free. So I don't know.
It is free.
I know. I just
like and
laugh.
subscribe.
I
It
just
doesn't cost
laugh.
any money.
Yeah, I get you.
But, yeah, it is free.
It's free to be a good person.
It is free to be a good person. So we appreciate you guys for checking it out wherever you are watching it, listen to it, whatever you're doing. We don't care as long as you're supporting.
That's almost like it takes more muscles to frown than to smile. That's really what you hit them with. Okay, but continue. My bad.
You like that?
No.
Check out the site, bluffcitymedia.co. All of our digital content, all of our written content is on there. Think you guys will enjoy it. Also, bluffcitynil.com. Check that out for all of our videos on the NIL side, also to donate to the NIL fund. And I think that wraps us up. So we'll see you guys back here next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of On the Bluff. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of Tiger athletics and how you can become a contributor. We'll see you back here next week.